much for coming. It's lovely to see such a huge turnout today. Lots of familiar, friendly faces, as well as lots of new ones that I'm looking forward to meeting. If you don't know already, my name's Emily and I'm the Marketing and New Business Manager at the Blue Ballroom. And I'm really proud to stand here today and introduce the topic of Pride, a new model of employee engagement. I'm sure it will have value to all of you in your day jobs. It's been tried and tested, it's measurable, it's got tangible aspects, and I'm really excited to share this with you today. Without further ado, I'll introduce Sheila Parry, who's the founder of the Blue Ballroom and the creator of the Pride model. So thank you, Sheila.
So, it might surprise you to know that I got my first communications gig nearly 40 years ago. I was a student and I used to supplement my overdraft, probably, by being a receptionist and telephonist. And I worked in Leeds and London, in factories, in offices, in retail, and everywhere I went, I had this job. And unfortunately, it's not a picture of me. It's not a picture of me because if you ever look for pictures of yourself at work, you never have any. You have pictures of yourself on holiday, don't you? Because that's where you enjoy yourself. But you have very few pictures of yourself at work. This is also the only picture I could find of a switchboard that, if you look up old-fashioned switchboard, it takes you back to the 1950s. And actually, it wasn't that long ago. It was only the late 1970s. But I learned so much as a telephonist, receptionist, as a temp, working a week here and a week there. And especially as I knew I wanted some kind of job in communications. I knew I wanted to write. I knew I wanted to talk to people for as long as possible, And I was really lucky because one summer holiday, I landed a great gig. I landed 6 weeks at Coca-Cola. I mean, by this time, I wanted to get into branding. I wanted to get into advertising. And I got 6 weeks at Coca-Cola's new head office in London, in Wrights Lane, and I thought I'd gone to heaven. This is what it was like. Oh. That's more like me in the 1970s. You can join in if you want. Keep it going. It's the real thing. Coca-Cola was the real thing and I wanted to feel it. I was there for 6 weeks. I sat on reception. About 20% of the people who worked at Wrights Lane Coca-Cola head office were like that. They were happy, clappy people. They were probably in branding, and I loved them. And I made real tiny little apology to Coca-Cola to say that an awful lot of them just weren't happy. A lot of the people who worked in the head office walked past me for 6 weeks without saying good morning in the morning. They didn't say thank you when I took their messages or gave them their coffees. They just kind of got on with their day. And it was a bit of a learning curve for me, because if you spend a week at a company, you can kind of make anything work, can't you? I mean, it's not, it just can't be that bad. But 6 weeks when you're 19, I really got a lot of wisdom. 6 weeks when you're 19, 6 weeks of a job, you get some very strong opinions. And the opinion that I formed there was that when I got into the real world of work and when I had to work full time, I wanted it to be the real thing. I wanted to be one of those evangelists, really. And I have to say that for the last 30 odd years, I've been pretty lucky because, with the notable exception of a few really grim projects, I have made my life very happy through work. And at a particular point, I think, I started working to make other people happy at work. I think I made a transition from being everything all about me to actually being all about everybody else. And I think this is a sort of huge strength that we have. Most of us here in communications, in HR, we are the happy people, we are the evangelists, we are the employer brands. So I want you to feel happy with me, because I think that what we do makes a real difference, and what I'm going to bring you today I'm so excited about, because I think it can make an even bigger difference to the way that people relate to their work. So I'm going to fast forward now to 2013, because some of you might know that until last October I was Managing Director of the Blue Ballroom, and last October I handed that role over to Kate, who's here, and who will be joining one of our tables for discussions later. And so the last 6 months I've had the freedom to really sort of concentrate on what's been percolating with me for a long time, but most specifically since 2013. And in 2013, I, like you, was buried in the future of work. Millennials were coming. Oh my goodness gracious, we were going to have to do things differently. We were going to have to run our offices differently. We were going to have to communicate differently. We were going to have to think differently. We were going to have to develop things that we never had before. Or did we? But in 2013, I was beginning to think about what I could leave. I don't want to make it sound as grand as a legacy, but what I could do for the future of work. I'd worked for a pretty long time, and I was prepared to think about, what's the future going to hold? The other really important thing I think that happened in 2013 is that my own children were beginning to get into the workplace. They were beginning to look for careers of their own. And so a lot of the conversation at home was kind of like a live case study of conversations that were going on at work. And so it got personal again. It stopped being about all of my clients and all of my work colleagues, and these issues began to get very personal. In 2013, I was invited to speak at a sixth form conference at a local school. The subject was the future of the economy. I said yes. I don't know why I said yes. I said yes without thinking about it. I was on the panel with two economists, one from UCL, one from Warwick, eminent economists, a journalist in the Daily Mail, two MDs of pretty big companies, and another SME. And I thought, what have I done? What have I done? What have I done? I love teenagers almost more than any other age group that have ever passed through my kitchen. But I was so scared of standing up in front of 200 of them. I really prepared. So what I did was I actually started to think, what do they really want to know about the future of the economy? Only about 5 of them are doing economics. So they're just going to eyes glazing over. But I thought about them and I asked them. And I did a lot of asking. And I did a lot of asking with my own family, and I did a lot of asking with everybody who passed through my kitchen, and I promise you there are quite a few under 20s passing through the kitchen at the time. And I asked kids what they wanted out of their future. And of course, the numbers, money. I want to earn enough money to get the hell out of here. Independence. I want to be independent. But the other beautiful things that they said were this. And these are the things that were in the quantitative stuff. These are the things that are in the open questions. When you ask people what they want out of life, they want to work for companies that they are going to tell their friends, and their friends will think they're cool. Now, if you are 18, 19, you probably don't know 7,000 FTSEs and big employers. You certainly don't know the 5 million SMEs in the country that you could work for. You probably do know the public sector. But in those 200 young people, teenagers that were sitting in front of me, half were going to end up working for companies that they hadn't heard of and we haven't heard of now. Because the reputation of companies that actually employ half of the 30 million people who work in the UK are small. They don't have the big budgets that the brands have to create employer brands, maybe not even brands, which is another subject. But these are the sorts of topics that these are the sort of feelings that people wanted to have about their work. And so when I looked at them, I thought, is it really that different? Is it really that different from how it was in 1970 something? But the real gift that I heard, and the inspiration for a lot of what I'm going to talk about today, is my daughter. And how lucky was I that this is true. The reason why my daughter is here today is not just to make you all feel welcome and get you a drink at the end. She's here because she said, I want to work for a company that is going to make me proud. if you're not proud, you can't be happy. And I just thought of Coca-Cola and thought, my goodness, it is amazing what comes around, what goes round. And so I'd like to thank Robin for that sort of soundbite, which has just crystallised what I had been thinking for some time about how to make the workplace a place where your children want to work, and how to regrow and how to boost the British economy by having people who are going to be productive at work and happy at work. So all these words went flying around as they normally do, and they've come out in the Pride model. And I'm going to give you a brief introduction about the Pride model today, and I'm delighted to go into further detail as long as you need in your own offices with your own events. Very happy to do events like this, because I'm passionate that if you have pride in yourself and pride in the organisation you work for, you will be both a better performer and you will be happier. And that is good for all of us. And that's the philosophy. So the Pride model is a philosophy. I ask you to embrace it. I ask you to open your eyes to what you want out of life and how you can get it at work. We do spend an awful lot of our time at work, and there are very few photos of ourselves at work. And I think that's a sad thing. Last 2 photos of myself at work, I was standing outside Milan Duomo with the lovely Nikki and the lovely Toby, having a fantastic time reporting on a risk conference. I've done 8. They do get more interesting, but all due respect, Toby, I love you. But reporting on a risk conference I have been doing for 10 years, reporting on any conferences for 20. I love what I do. The picture is of Milan Duomo. It's not so inspiring, watching someone be a note taker, but it's some sort of indication. Let's have a great time at work. Let's have the sort of work experience that you want to take pictures of. So it's a philosophy, but as Emily said, it is a pragmatic methodology. The Pride model will have measures, it will have component parts, it will have definitions and models that you can apply. I would just say, remember that it's a philosophy, and the model is there to support it and not the other way around. Okay? So there are 2 principles I'd like to lay out about Pride first, and then I'll go into the 5 component parts. The first principle is this, that my view of the world is a communicator's view, and I know my place. When I started work, I wanted to create better messaging, design better communications channels. It took a little while to realise the role I had to play in the organisations I worked for. And the role I had to play is to make companies work better, teams work better, people understand more about what they were doing, people be motivated to do what they did better, people who would have developed better skills to create better projects and more effective projects, and be more polite and ask more questions. And so the role as a communicator that I feel I've had, it morphed into this thing called employee engagement. That's just a label. It's a nice shorthand for making individuals more effective in the workplaces for a common purpose and be respected for it. So there's, write your own definition of engagement. I'm just sort of leading you through why I do what I do and why I feel I can start talking about a model to create business success. Because communications is just one little bit of engagement. Engagement is what is going to bring you your organisational success. The discretionary effort, the emotional connection with your job over the rational, all of those things are what makes the difference between what Jim Collins calls good and great. What I call just fair to good would be good. Fair to good, if we could do this in this country, would make a huge difference to the economy. 1 out of 3, whichever, you can choose your survey, but 1 out of 3, definitely less than half of the people in the UK trust their boss. 1 in 3 are really engaged. 2 in 3, not sure. very few probably disengage, because the disengaged generally tend to be looking elsewhere, or you'll never really convert them. So I'm not terribly worried about the small minority disengaged. But the mass of people who don't much care, that's a huge potential to make a difference with. And so the model, the Pride model, recognises that communications is only a part of it, because there's a whole load of other stuff going on. And you better know what the other stuff is. If you're running an organisation, you've got to know what the other stuff is that's driving your individuals to perform or not perform, and your company to perform or not perform. The other principle of the Pride model, and this is really hard to live by, really hard, is that every step of the way, every module of the model, we have adopted, and I say that organisations, leaders should adopt, a dual perspective. You should look through the lens of your organisation, its structures, its strategies, its aims, its objectives, its shareholder value, all the things that drive its business success or its commercial success. You look through the organisation's raison d'etre. What are you trying to achieve? What were you set up to do? How do you measure your success? These are all the things that drive, if you like, the frameworks of how organisations are run. The other lens is the individual. And it's really hard to live by this principle. And that is, can you look at the world of work through the eyes of an individual? If you hire 100,000 people, if you hire 10, 15 at the Blue Ballroom, it's hard enough to look at the world of work through 15 individual lenses. But if you hire 20,000 people or more, can you truly keep the individual perspective in your mind? I'd say try. Try, because that way you will understand why people are turning up for work. The communities in the workplace are so much smaller than the communities in your outside marketing arenas. And you know how you talk about personalisation of your brand. Talk about personalisation of your work experience. Think about what it is to walk inside your company as an individual. When you read most business models and you read most business books, there's a lot about it and you know, inanimate objects. And what I'm trying to do with the Pride model is to think about us as we, communities, and I, and lots of I's, and bringing those together. So it's very, very hard to do. So if you've got a psychology background, you have an enormous experience, because you won't have to. A lot of your knowledge will be based around what makes what human beings work. I've had to learn it, but I've had to learn it more through experience. So those are the two principles, really simple. Communications isn't a magic wand, and try to have this dual perspective. It will make a fantastic difference. So now I'm going to talk about the 5 component parts of Pride, and I'm going to give you quite a brief description, why it's important, how to think about it, because we're going to be able to break into groups and discuss these modules. And this is a model that's ready for birth, if you like. But there's a lot of detail behind it, and I'm still in the process of making it live through case study and making it live through contribution. So anybody who thinks this is a good idea and would like to share their experiences of some of these aspects, please contact me. The book is still, 95% done, and there's 5% space left for more story. So let's start with purpose. I put here that purpose has it's the beginning, middle, and end. I find it very difficult to start with purpose personally, because some people are born with purpose. Some people develop their sense of purpose. Some people, sadly, fail to reach a sense of purpose through their lives. And some people kind of changes, and I think that's fairly normal, that your sense of purpose is very different from 19 to 59. And so I think it's sensible to address purpose, but keep an open mind. Companies and organisations, like people, are also in dynamic states. And some companies, and I think we have, if I dare mention the Body Shop here, some companies are set up with clear senses of purpose from the beginning. We have some charities here I've always felt a little bit envious of people working in communications in charities, because you can kind of say, what do you do and what do you do it for? And they can tell you. They can tell you the deep-seated purpose that brings them to work every day, and that's a fantastic asset. It's a fantastic thing to bring people into your world and into your employment. But I don't believe, in all truth, that purpose is something that companies have from the beginning. They obviously have an issue. They may have a product they want to make, or they may have a problem they want to solve, or they may be serving society as it is now. Hundreds of companies are serving society as we choose to organise society, and that gives them, in my book, a purpose. But sometimes purpose comes later. Sometimes purpose comes when you've made enough money and you actually want to start making a difference in life, a greater difference in life. And in the model, in the Pride model, purpose means what contribution are you making to the society. So that's my sort of definition of it. There are hundreds, but it's what contribution do you make to society? And it has its parallel, of course, with an individual. We have been served such, well, young people maybe, we too, but have been served such a terrible, terrible 15 years of institutional trust being wrecked, that many companies are beginning to create statements of purpose to address those issues, to redefine them themselves. And I think we do sometimes as individuals too. So purpose isn't always altruistic. Purpose, sometimes it's because you've got to get yourself out of a mess. What I think the really good companies are doing, the really clever companies are doing, they're creating a sense of purpose, and they're then making it real, and they're then living to it. They may lead this renaissance in trust in institutions that the next generation needs. And I think that there's some fantastic companies here present who, if you're willing to, can go and join and talk about purpose and what it means to you and what it means in your company. What I've done in the model is try to create a purpose map where there is room for what happens in society, what happens in your life, what happens in your life at work, and how you can fulfill your purpose, your sense of purpose professionally in your work. And that's the sweet spot. And from lots of research into how companies present themselves with their sense of purpose, there are very few who truly communicate it to their people, to their potential employees, as something that they will benefit from as well. Most companies say, this is our purpose, it's great, join us and we'll help you fulfill it. I can't really not mention Diageo. Diageo, I think, have a splendid message which says we want these sorts of people. We have this purpose to celebrate life every day, everywhere. Come and join Diageo, and you can fulfill your dreams, you can fulfill your desires with us at the same time. I hope I have paraphrased your website well enough, but I've looked at Diageo quite closely. But I think it's really helpful when you go through a mixed life, when you go through life which has got like these things and very few straight lines, that we work to create our own sense of purpose, make room for a professional sense of purpose and your personal sense of purpose. Where you have a job where those two can sit together, you have a job that you don't want to leave. You have a job that you value. You have a job that you'd actually probably want your next generation to have. The second part of the puzzle is reputation, and this is truly where I think a relationship with a company starts. You might find the purpose later, you might find the purpose if you know it already, but really you start your relationship with a potential employer by knowing what you can know from the outside. And everybody could say, yeah, that's great. It's everything you do, everything you say, but it's everything everybody else says about you as well. And I think this is where companies have a great journey to make yet, which is to, when they are creating their product services, the ground rock is actually what you do, what you perform as a company, but then the way you push it across. Employees and potential employees are still pretty low down the list in terms of priority. So even some very, I would use the word reputable companies have very poor communications to potential and existing employees. The conversation doesn't often get much richer when you get to join a company, because communications that happens outside still regards the outside arena as different from the inside arena. There are blurring of lines, and there are lots of people talking about employees being in the public arena as well. But if you look at the communications that people are putting out, they very rarely put across an employer brand type of message. It's still very much my terms, my product, my service is what we do. Not what you can do, what we can offer you, what you can do for yourself while you lend us your time, while you have the contract with us. So those companies that are becoming, if you looked at the world's most valuable brands, the world's most reputable brands, and you look at other league tables of the world's most desired employers for school leavers, for graduates, most searched for LinkedIn, they're the same. They're the same. And brilliant for the 5% of companies who are getting it right, brilliant. But we as employers need, if we want the best people joining us, we need to be thinking much more about the reputation we put across to them as potential employers. So he who shouts loudest are the ones who are becoming, it's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. And I know Stephen will talk about this a little bit with brand. The second point is really to not forget that reputation is a pivotal point in a relationship between an employee and a company, and that what happens in the media when you are part of a company is still very impactful on how you feel about that company. And if you look at some wonderful things that happen, discoveries, breakthroughs. I mean, wouldn't it be great if somebody went into Apple and felt as good working for Apple as we do when we get the latest iPhone? That's what we should be aiming for. We want people to feel as excited coming to our companies as they feel when they buy a wanted product. It's very, very rarely the case. And it's very hard to achieve, but some companies are managing to achieve it. I did think also about Volkswagen. Volkswagen, the emissions scandal, is still being reported in terms of lost revenue. Very, very low down on any media is a conversation about lost trust and the loss of the contract between the employees and employer, and the 60,000 people working in Volkswagen US. The CEO apologises to the president, and only he has said, and to the 60,000 employees who have lost trust in us as a brand. So it continues. Reputation. It is a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, and it needs to be fed. Once we're in a company, we get to know the inner truth. And the central part of the Pride model really is the point at which it relates most closely to the work that we have done as internal communicators, and we together have done with HR and brand and operational clients who work on the real story. So integrity in the context of the Pride model is the inner truth. The inner truth when you join the company, you've got the job, you've moved in, you kind of begin to feel what it's like to work there. And that's when brilliant relationships can happen at work. And it's also where relationships can go a little bit haywire and be very, very unsatisfactory. There's a lot of work being done in this area, and I would like to give reference to Simon Barrow, who more or less created the phrase or the term employer brand about the time I was at Coca-Cola. So it's been around a long time. But what the employer brand does, and I think what the employee and the sort of the way it's implemented, the employee value proposition, a lot of people call it, this employee life cycle at work, from how you're recruited to how you're developed to how you leave and stay as a happy alumni. It's all brilliant and it's all important, but it's the infrastructure. The difference, I think, with the work that I've tried to do in the Pride model, and I think Jack Winters, who we take in the integrity table, has helped here with some anecdotes, and other people have helped me with anecdotes, is that what the feeling is about when you walk into work I've tried to look at from Monday to Friday, or from a beginning of a shift to an end of a shift, or a beginning of a work pattern to an end of a work pattern. So rather than look at did I actually feel great because of the recruitment process, I really encourage people to look at it. Well, what's it like when I go into work every morning? Does anybody say hello? Does anybody ask me how I am? Does anybody care? Does anybody care? Is it hi? It's like we need the human connection. We need to feel that we belong in our workplace, that we can be ourselves, even more now than 30 years ago, when we were expected to leave our home life at the door, where we would not have got the job if we had said we were married with children, where we certainly didn't have pictures of our children on our desks. Now, because we're always connected, and because our employers want us to be available all the time and to be brand ambassadors all the time, they better take us as we are. They better take us as we are with all our other things that are going on in our lives. So integrity is the inner truth of your organisation, and whether or not what you say you do is what you do inside. Direction is direction is a kind of, it's a lovely part of an employee's relationship with their organisation. Once you actually care where the company's going, what does tomorrow bring, and you want to take part, that's a really magic moment. It's a key part of engagement, is when I give a damn about where we're all going and how can I help. And I'm sure some of you have read Roger Dupree, who was a kind of founding father of communications through change, who talks about this magic moment when somebody thinks, yes, this is where I'm going and how can I help. It's that kind of gift. But in my book, direction has got three dimensions, if you like. One of them is where your company's going. And clearly, startups are different from mature markets, are different from companies in crisis, are different from a multiple competitive arena. And at any given time, your company or your organisation is going to be here and it's going to be going there. And sometimes it's not up, it can be down, it can be however. The market forces are driving it. The other dimensions, though, one is normally talked about. Okay, so I'm a receptionist. I quite like to be a secretary, or I quite like to be a marketing assistant. I quite like to go into this arena. A lot of direction is talked about where you are within your organisation, and they are those kind of two almost dual carriageway moments where you just, you can go along together. I would commend looking at a third, which is where are you in your life? Where are you in your life? Would I like now to be sent to Sydney and set up a subsidiary of the Blue Ballroom? Well, it'd be tempting, but I can probably think of 3 or 4 other people in the Blue Ballroom for whom that would be a rather more compelling offer right now because of where they are in their lives. And Ria has told me, Ria Hendricks, who will be looking after the purpose table, she told me a story once where she worked for a large organisation, and it was the annual succession meeting, and the board and the senior HR advisors were looking at the succession planning for the leadership of the company and looking at the next up and coming 20, 30 people and deciding which opportunities they were going to be offered. And one of them was going to be offered an overseas move. And that was, expected to be the opportunity of a life. And Ria said, has anybody asked this young man if he'd like to move countries? You know what the answer was. It just wasn't at the right time. Family issues, personal issues, staff didn't make him a better or lesser employee, or a lower or a higher high flyer, but people deciding other people's future just didn't know. And I just think that's not unique, sadly. So always more dimensions to consider than you think. Now we're going to talk about energy. And I have been asked, now come on, did you really think these 5 things are what makes up pride, or did you just get to the end and need an E? And I'm going to be very honest with you. The RID came first. Reputation, integrity, direction, that's going to move the bar from fair to good. Purpose came with the generation. Purpose came with this moment we're in when people need to reconnect with the purposes of their organisations and themselves. E is because nobody has told me how to carry on reinventing a company, reinventing myself for 30 or 40 or now probably a 50th year where I'm going to be working. So energy is, I think, a kind of really great under-resourced, this is something that is not being spoken about enough. Energy is spoken about in pockets. We talk about energy in terms of well-being, and we talk about keeping our workers happy and healthy. We do that at the Blue Ballroom. We were working so hard, we were driving people into sickness leave. It took us at the Blue Ballroom, 15 people, huge dynamic, huge personal energy. It took a HR advisor coming in and saying, people are really not very well here. Apologies to the Blue Ballroom team. We were just working them too hard. We had to look at how to reinvigorate individuals. We had to look at where they were getting their inspiration from. No photos at work, no photos of me looking at a screen. We're the knowledge workers. We need external energy. We need inspiration. We need to look beyond where we're looking now to work out where we find our ideas, how we communicate with each other. I would say I find my energy from other people. And I think, a lot of us do. But we need it to be moderated and facilitated and gathered and nourished and grown. So energy in the Pride model has 3 tiers. And the first one is to make your organisation sustainable, legal, safe, healthy. And it sounds like, well, that's a bit boring, isn't it? No, it's not. You need to pay your taxes or you lose your brand reputation. You need to follow the law or you lose your brand reputation. You need to have compliance. You need to have risk analysis. Companies that last forever are companies that are grounded in very, very sound infrastructures. So I think there's a very serious part of the energy model to get in place. The second one is, are our people healthy? Have we got a healthy work environment? Do we have health education for our employees? Employers of large numbers run health education programs, partly so people don't go off sick. I mean, my favourite group, as Toby knows, the insurance and risk managers of DHL. My family knows they're my favourite people as well because they're smiling at me. But they lovely people. But they look at the cost. They look at the cost of lost days of sickness and the costs of paying premiums for half 500,000 employees. So keeping people healthy is a very serious financial issue. But it's also about well-being, and they have pinpointed pockets, hotspots of troublesome countries and troublesome diseases that happen in those countries, and are doing very positive education about those diseases in those countries to prevent people getting those diseases. So there's a very sort of mutual sustainability about looking after employees that is really, really important. And I don't think that you have to be altruistic for it to be good. If you want a sustainable business, you have to look at the numbers too. And the third one is inspiration. And I kind of encourage you to find inspiration in others, to look for inspiration in others, because it won't find you. You just have to keep on looking. So that's the sort of half-hour rattle through of the Pride model. I will be taking questions, and Stephen will be taking questions after the next session. I'm going to introduce Stephen next. Because my focus has been for 30 odd years how organisations work and how people work from the inside. Although I've worked for a lot of very important brands and have worked on the kind of the other side of external communications as well, despite that, I felt that I wanted my principles, these modules that I've created to be tested, and to be tested by somebody who works with some of the most reputable brands in the world, testing their external brand value. And so I met Stephen Cheliotis about a couple of years ago, and he is the CEO of the Centre for Brand Analysis. And he and I met Stephen and liked a lot of what he said about brands, and I thought we were on the same wavelength. And I asked him if he would co-write with me a diagnostic to put all of this kind of I don't know, left hand thinking with some right hand mechanics. Is that the right way round, or is it the other way? I would never know. But anyway, I just felt I needed some balance. I needed some challenge. And so Stephen is going to take you through why some of these factors are important to successful brands and organisations, and the diagnostic. So, Stephen.
The first slide essentially is my definition of brand. Now, I know you all work in the world of brand in one way or another, but I think it's important to give that definition. And the quote, which you can't currently see, is reiterating that brand is not something that is defined within the organisation. It's not something where we can say, this is our brand, this is 100% who we are, and this is how you're all going to think about us. Brand obviously lives in your own minds and your own hearts. If I say a particular brand, McDonald's, you might say convenient good food. You might go evil American corporation. They're very different brands. So there is not one single unifying way of saying this is what our brand is. And the reason I like this isn't the fact that it just reiterates that brand belongs to you, the consumer, the prospective employer, the investor, and so forth, but actually also this word here, gut feeling. And we have to remember that as human beings, most of our decisions are made on our gut. We don't sit there toying through rationally all of the pros and cons of every single decision we make. More often than not, we shortcut to our gut feeling. And of course, most people in terms of the health profession now understand that actually our gut does have its own central nervous system that helps to guide the decisions that are made in our brain. So when we say, oh, it's just a gut feeling, that's not metaphorical, it's literal as well. We do make decisions based on what our gut is telling us, based on all the accumulated knowledge that we've had. Another way of looking at it is this System 1 and System 2. Now, if anyone's seen any work around this, they'll understand that System 1 is fast, it's unconscious, it's automatic, it's effortless. It's how we make most of our everyday decisions. And then we have this System 2. It's slower, it's conscious. It takes effort, and we use it to evaluate, or at least post-evaluate, decisions that we've made rationally. But System 1 is how we make most decisions. It's not System 2. We like to sit there and think as human beings, oh, we're very clever and we've really thought this through and we've done this, and actually, most of the time we've made the decision immediately. And even if you think about a big purchase that you've made, a house, they say that the average person has decided whether they're going to buy the house or not within 5 seconds. It's probably the most important decision you're going to make, or one of, and certainly one of the most expensive, but pretty much you can walk in and go, it's just something about it, I don't like it, or I do like it. So it's that gut, it's that System 1 thinking, how we evaluate things. Do I want to buy that brand or that brand? Do I want to join this company or that company? Most of it isn't driven by the rational. And as a result of that, we have very, very basic buckets that we put things in. Love that, hate that, don't like that person, do like that place, never going there again. And when actually, and obviously I spend my life doing a lot of external brand research, when you really pin them down, say, why did you buy PG Tips over Tetley? They're not really sitting there going, oh, well, it's slightly stronger and it gives you a... They kind of have to really think, God, why do I? And then they post-rationalise it. They sort of come up with some answers. But most of the time, we just go, I just buy PG Tips. I don't buy Tetley, or the other way around. That's the way we work as humans. People kind of forget in this day and age we're under pressure to succeed that biologically we're meant to be quite lazy. Once we've had the kill, we're not meant to be running around thinking, doing things. So how do we as brands become that brand that stands out, that brand that people automatically go, I really like that brand, I really want to work for them, I really want to purchase them. Yeah, it's double the price, I'll purchase it anyway. How do we do that? Well, I think the 5 components in Sheila's model are very much a signpost of how we do that. And I think purpose, Sheila started with it, I'm going to start with it, is fundamental. It's a very old example, but this kind of reiterates what I was saying. It's the blind test, Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. This has been done so many times. This particular test was done by a professor called Leslie de Chenatanay. Of course, when everyone's blind, the majority pick Diet Pepsi. Once you take the blindfold off, though, and you say, this is Coke, this is Pepsi, suddenly only a minority pick Diet Pepsi. Everyone's picked Diet Coke. Quite a few people don't know what to do because their taste buds are saying, well, actually, I think I kind of prefer Pepsi, but everything else in their mind is saying, no, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola's the better brand. Why? It's the real thing. It's about happiness. It's about all these other subconscious, irrational things that have been planted in our brain by everything from advertising to experience to what our friends are doing and what everyone else is saying about that brand. So if you are trying to make your brand better or more attractive as a consumer or employee, rational is not necessarily the way to go. It's about purpose. So let's think about Apple, the world's biggest company, yet equally the world's coolest. How the hell did they do that? I think purpose had a lot to do with it. The inspiration of Steve Jobs to say, actually, computers, this is back in the 70s, aren't about empowering businesses, they're about empowering everyone. I am going to create machines that enable you to do better, to do best, to do as good as you can do. That is a vision, that is a purpose, that is a mantra that people can follow, and it's something that people believe in. And as consumers, that is true too. The reality is, one computer, one smartphone, one MP3 player is not that different to another. Why are we paying that premium? Why are we queuing around the block to buy the new Apple? Well, it's partly because we bought into that ethos. Compare Apple to Dell, and you kind of go, it's not as exciting, it's not as interesting. And a lot of that excitement and interest comes because of that core sort of mantra, that core vision that Steve Jobs had. Interestingly, post the death of Steve Jobs, the mission statement of Apple has gone from empowering people and so forth to the most bland, generic mission statement. In fact, it's not even a mission statement, really. It's a description of what they do. We make the best personal computers out there. We've revolutionized the music industry by creating the award-winning iTunes stores, etc., etc. It's about the where, it's about the how we do it, it's about the what we do. That isn't what made Apple famous. It isn't what made Apple enticing. It isn't what made Apple interesting. And already, only a few years post Steve Jobs' death, I think we're already starting to see that people are starting to doubt that business. Where is it going? What's it trying to do? So purpose is really important. British Airways, with my super brands hat on, we identified as the UK's strongest brand. But 4 or 5 years ago when we were doing our research, it was up there. Of course, everyone knows it. We've all grown up with it. But it was starting to struggle. And it needed to reinvigorate that emotional connection between the consumer, the employee, and its business. And of course, it was a pilot when they were doing their repositioning that actually said, we don't really need a clever consultant to come in and tell us our positioning. Isn't it this that's sewn into my pilot's jacket? Isn't it this, I haven't got it here, to fly to serve? And it was something that had been written into pilots' jackets since about the 1920s. So, you know, to fly to serve was about reinvigorating that brand behind a vision, behind a purpose, behind a mission. And of course, the brand very quickly improved itself and got to number 1. So all of that's important because it creates emotional engagement. Now, McKinsey have pointed out that emotionally unique brands deliver 10% higher returns to shareholders. And Gallup have shown that if your brand is emotionally connected, you will get a premium, whatever category you're in. Now, of course, that's some external evidence, but exactly the same applies internally. Are you going to be more productive if you believe in the purpose of the brand? Are you going to stick around longer if you believe in the purpose and the vision of the brand and where it's going? I think the answer is most definitely yes. And of course, beyond that, we've also seen the rise of what we call the trend of visible values. It's staying. The rise of social media means that we want to say, this is who I am, this is what I stand for. Look at the Ice Bucket Challenge. 2.4 million videos were uploaded because people want to say, look at me, look at what I'm doing. This is what I stand for. And even in the mainstream, this is ANZ Bank in Australia, who were trying to help the cause of equality in marriage, so gay marriage. All of its cash machines became gay TMs, and all of the things, you know, it's all a bit cheesy, but all of this colour and so cash out and proud. Now, you can argue about whether that's the best example of living values, but the point is that kind of thing is here to stay. Businesses have to say, here are our values, this is what we believe in, and if you believe something similar, follow us. So for me, purpose is fundamental to attracting and retaining employees, and indeed attracting and retaining customers. But that motivation can only work if those purpose and those values are aligned to who you hire. So when you're doing recruitment, are you hiring people that believe in those? Are you attracting people that believe in those purpose? So in terms of the diagnostic, we first of all asked about the knowledge. Do you know what the company's purpose is? Do you understand it? Could you actually explain it to someone else? And more importantly, what's the impact of purpose? Did you join the company partly because of the purpose? Are you partly attracted to staying here because of the purpose? Is the purpose actually applied? Is it real, or is it just some management speak living on the website? Do you actually practice the purpose in your day-to-day jobs? Are you rewarded for making it happen? And also, in terms of basic behaviours, the tool enables us to basically test whether that business is behaving as we'd want it to. Is it honest? Is it respectful? Is it caring? Is it cooperative? So that part of the diagnostic tool is really trying to get under the skin of the purpose and whether it's working as it should. Next piece is reputation. Now, I can obviously talk about reputation for days, so I'm going to just try and pull out a few basic bits here. The first is we know that reputation impacts employee motivation. You know, when we ask the employees of leading super brands whether they're likely to recommend their business, we find that 68% said yes, they would. When we look at a nationally representative sample of different businesses across different categories, we find that that level goes down to 38%. It's a 30% uplift in recommendation at people working for major brands. And the same is true when you look at other questions. When the company has a problem, I think of them as my own. I have a strong sense of personal attachment to this company, or indeed I'm proud to work for this company. All of the metrics show that those working for well-regarded brands perform much stronger. And quite simply, as Sheila's already mentioned, there is a correlation. We've asked the question, which media company would you like to work for, which drinks company would you like to work for, and so on. The order, as Sheila has mentioned, is the same order as our general super brands list. Now, that's not to say that everyone here works for M&S, as Sheila pointed out. There's only so many companies with a huge brand equity. But within your field, what is your reputation? Against your direct competitors and those that are akin to you, what is your reputation? Are you the Matalan or are you the M&S? So how do you build a great reputation? Well, partly it's about physical availability. So everywhere that someone wants to buy a given product, are you there? But more importantly, it's about this mental availability. The key category entry points that trigger someone to think about your category, do they stimulate someone to think about you? So if I'm in the tea category and I think I need a pick-me-up, what brand do I think of? If I think I want a brand that would impress people that come around my house, what brand do I think of? When I think, I need some comfort, I've got a big meeting coming, I need something to prepare myself, something warm, something that's going to make me feel good, what brand do I think of? Whatever category you're in, you need to understand what those category entry points are, and you need to work to make sure that your brand comes to mind specifically against those category entry points. A few other things just to mention on reputation, because these are things we again measure in the diagnostic. I'm using Chanel as an example to illustrate a few of these points. The first is originality. Now, when Chanel first started designing clothes, or indeed perfume, it was very different to what everyone else was doing. It was much more overtly sexual, for example. It was much more consumer-centric, because that's how women wanted to feel when they were putting on a great dress or putting on perfume. They wanted to feel sexy. They wanted to feel interesting to the opposite sex. But all the other brands weren't doing that. So why I've used Chanel as an example is because it's customer-centric. And that also accounts for employees. What do your employees want? What motivates them? How do we do things differently? How do we innovate? How are we original? And how can that originality lead to fame, to leadership, to being the one that people look at in the category as opposed to a follower? The other thing is quite simply, this is obviously green and black, how do we make a bloody great product? How do we make a product that people want, that they desire, that they're willing to pay a premium for? How do we, in our category, be the one that's most aspirational and most interesting? And then, obviously, distinctiveness. This is obviously Innocent, with their lovely little ice cream vans there. But, can you imagine Sprite doing that? No, it would look weird. Innocent has a very particular personality, a very particular tone of voice. And again, it's about distinctiveness. So I think whether you're looking at Chanel, Green or Blacks or Innocents, they're doing things differently. They are pioneering, they are standing out, and they are enticing people that are engaged with what that brand has to offer. And quite frankly, strong brands are meant to be emotionally engaging, as I mentioned. It's not about the rational. So if some people don't hate your brand, I'd suggest you've got a bit of a problem. You want people to feel something. And My Mate's a classic case of that, where they actually embrace the fact that some people hate them. They are spending money to put ads on tubes saying, My Mate's disgusting. But that's fine, because it actually works in terms of making them famous, in terms of talkability, but also in terms of saying, look, this brand isn't for everyone. So again, in our reputation segment, we ask about fame. Is this a well-known brand? Leadership, is it perceived to be the pioneer in the category? Is it ahead of the game? What are the products like? How do you feel about the product? Are you proud to show people the products that you produce? Is the brand itself original and distinctive? And also, is the brand durable? If there was a crisis, would your brand survive? As an employee, do you have that confidence that you're working for a brand with a strong enough reputation that it could survive a financial crisis or any other crisis? And quite frankly, we also ask that recommendation question. Would you recommend this brand? Integrity. I'm trying to whiz through. Integrity is really important, because even though most people make decisions emotively, clearly experience tells us if something keeps going wrong, don't do it. So British Airways, to fly to serve, the big relaunch, emotional connection, fantastic. But if they didn't invest in their terminals, in their technology, in their planes, in their lounges, then quite frankly, it would have been a very short-term repositioning. So everyone said, this is exciting, this is engaging again. Oh, I got on the flight, oh, it was rubbish. Oh, the terminal was terrible. Oh, the staff didn't know what they were doing. So you've got to deliver as a brand, even if most people base their decisions emotively rather than rationally. If you don't deliver, they won't give you the benefit of the doubt more than X number of times. And quite frankly, it's also really bad motivation for the employer. If you haven't seen this, Living with the Lag, by the way, do look it up, it's hilarious. It's a telecoms company in Scandinavia, and they were quite a small brand, but they were fighting against much bigger players. And the way that they overcame it is showing that actually the other players kept letting people down. They had the reputation, they had the emotional engagement, but they weren't delivering. So what they were saying is the broadband the other players were supplying was constantly buffering, it was constantly problematic. So they got these guys in these Oculus Rifts just to go about their lives, play table tennis, play bowling, do different kind of thing. But the feed that they were seeing was 1 or 2 seconds delayed. So there's some hilarious videos there. But can you imagine if you're working for one of those brands and you're getting those phone calls every 2 minutes, yeah, my broadband doesn't work, this doesn't work, you said you'd do this, you didn't deliver. I mean, not only is the customer going, maybe this brand isn't for me after all, but the employee is thinking exactly the same. So deliver. And of course, quite frankly, you can't get away with it anymore anyway. The rise of transparency. This is the Lambeth shopping trolley project. You can scan any product, it will tell you what are the air miles, what is the nutritional value, did they pay their tax, etc., etc. So don't claim anything, I'll check it. And also you've got the rise of brands like Honest by Bruno Peters, where you literally can go on their website and you can find out, well, how much did you pay the factory workers? What was the garment? What did that cost, that cotton? Where did you get the cotton from? What was your markup? How many air miles did you do? I mean, you can literally find out everything you want about the brand. Most people don't, of course, but the fact that it's there fills me with confidence, fills me with reassurance. So integrity is important because if you don't do it, whether you don't deliver for your employees or you don't deliver for your customers, people will eventually leave. And as I say, the rise of Glassdoor, lovely pixelated logo, but again, I can find out if you're paying right. I can find out the gap between what you're paying men and women and so on and so forth. So you can't hide behind it, which is why in terms of marketing, we're doing much less. We're going to tell you what we're doing. We're going to do it. This is the Siemens Crystal building in the Docklands. I don't know if anyone's been. But instead of Siemens saying, hey, look, all our products are about sustainability and so on, and we're going to do some ads talking about our sustainability, actually what we're going to do is build a building in the East End that is 100% sustainable, showcases all the different technologies that we've used to help sustainability. And we're going to get tens of thousands of kids from the UK to come down there and learn and do. So let's not tell people we're being sustainable, let's do it, let's show them, let's engage them. And again, whether you're a customer or your employee, how much more motivating is it when someone says they're going to do something and they do it, as opposed to just say something which sounds compelling and sounds engaging. And this is the Timberland store in Regent Street. And the reason I put this up here, because we talked about purpose at the beginning, again, much like your product value proposition, you've got to deliver the purpose, both internally and externally. I went in here and I bought some boots. And next to the counter are the values of Timberland. It was heritage, sustainability, can't remember the third one. But the second one really stuck in my mind because the guy said, do you want a bag? I said, no, that's all right, I'll squeeze it in this bag, so I'd already been somewhere else. He said, well, just have another bag. And I said, no, we'll think about the environment. I don't need it. I can squeeze it in. And oh, that's a load of, he actually said the word BS, but that's a load of bull. What difference is that going to make? And I was literally, there is a word called sustainability above your head. I mean, as a customer, I'm now going, I ain't going back there. That's a load of bull. But equally, why have they got that guy working there? Wouldn't you be more motivated if you hired people that actually believed in your values and believed in your purpose? So integrity is really important. But again, this has all got to flow through. What is your purpose? What is your reputation? How do we deliver against that? So again, with the diagnostic, we look at the external delivery and the internal. For the customers, are you delivering great products? Are you customer-centric? Do you have good customer satisfaction? Are you listening and adapting your proposition to your customers? And of course, are you treating the rest of the world nicely? Whether it's suppliers or the community, are you actually delivering? And then internally, of course, are you delivering to your employees? Are you giving them a good environment? Are you giving them cooperation if that's what you're saying you're going to give them? Is it an enjoyable place to work? And more importantly, are you giving people the tools, the resources, the information and the communication to empower them and enable them to do their job? So we look at both internal and external again in this metric. But ultimately it's, are you doing what you say you're going to do? That's ultimately what it comes down to. The last two, how am I doing on time? Direction. All right, we'll whiz through these two. Direction is simply, how can I be motivated to go somewhere if I don't know where I'm going? This is the Doomsday Book, by the way, for those that didn't recognise it. I didn't know what it looked like either. But the Doomsday Book is really a great example of the potency of information. You know, how were the Normans successful? The Doomsday Book. You know, the power of information to the Normans was amazing. And it's the same for everyone else. If you're working for a business, how much better can you be if you know what the hell's going on? If you know what different departments are doing, if you know that everyone's striving in the same direction as well, and what your role is within that. So information is key, but also, as I say, that you're not working from this blank sheet of paper. Whether it's a purpose or whether it's even more tactical, what are we doing? Where are we heading? Where are we now? And as I say, what's my role within that? How am I contributing to that purpose? How am I contributing to that value proposition? And it's the same, you know, when I do talks about brands within businesses. And you know, you start the conversation and most people go, oh, I don't work in marketing, so this is kind of interesting, but it's not really for me. Well, no, you're more likely to build or destroy the brand than the marketing team, particularly if you're customer facing. So it's a similar analogy. What actually is my role? How am I making an impact? And how do I feel about that impact that I'm making now that I've understood it? Who am I following? Sorry, I've really pixelated most of these pictures. This is James Dyson, if you can't see him through the dots. But, you know, an inspirational figure. There is a purpose there, there is a leader there, and there is a clear sense of where we are going as a company. Does that apply to other businesses? Are the leadership team inspirational? Do we know where we're going? And as I say, within that, not only is what is my role within the business, but it's also the fundamentals. You know, am I getting the performance reviews? Am I understanding where I can improve, where I'm doing wrong? All of those basic things. And again, we try to look at all of those within the tool. Again, both external and internal. Is the leadership team confident? Are they effective? Does a business, as a business, do we have momentum? Is there positivity around the place? And actually, how are we performing? And what are our long-term prospects? And as I say, internally, for me, as an individual employer, well, where am I on my journey? What's my personal plan? How is it tailored? How are you going to grow me and help me develop? And how do you enable me to understand the big picture and empower me to deliver that big picture on your behalf? And last but not least, energy. I'm just going to quickly say about energy that there is, again, this does apply to that 5% at the top, but there is a natural virtuous circle. If you have a strong brand, it's no coincidence that all of these brand leaders that were brand leaders, oh, I've missed the left-hand column, but they were all brand leaders in 1914, basically. They were all the #1 brand in their category in 1914. They still are in 2016. Now, you can talk about the product quality or the distribution or all kinds of things, but I think it's no coincidence that they also have powerful brands, because powerful brands do things like this. They attract exceptional talent. Well, if you've got the best talent, what are you going to do? You're probably going to have the best proposition. You've got the best proposition, what are you going to have? You're going to have the best reputation, and the virtuous circle continues. So strong brands do have an innate ability to keep energy and drive energy. And we've seen it with various studies. This is basically showing the sort of headspace share that an individual brand has versus its awareness. The brand leader in every single category we've done this analysis has a ridiculous advantage over everyone else. Everyone else is almost in a straight line between how much headspace you generate versus how much awareness you got. Brand leader, high involvement category, low involvement category, it matters not. The brand leader has a huge amount of headspace because it's the leader. It's the one that everyone thinks of. It's the one that every journalist thinks, well, we need a comment, let's go to them. They dominate that headspace and they get that energy. But even big brands lose energy. It's not static. You can't rest on your laurels and say, well, we've got a good reputation or we've got a purpose, therefore don't worry. And again, I draw you back to British Airways because they recognised that they had a great brand, they had a lot of goodwill, but they were wavering. They needed that to Fly to Serve relaunch. They needed to upgrade their tangible proposition to improve both the emotional and rational decision making that people were using when they were evaluating the brand. But they also needed something big to say we're back. So the Olympic sponsorship was massive for them, both internally and externally, to say, look, we're not this much loved heritage brand that's no longer relevant, we're still here and we're doing really interesting things. And the way they executed that was great. And that can reinvigorate the brand, change the momentum, change the energy, and start pushing the brand back upwards rather than wavering. But of course, once you do that, it's not just about the big things, it's about keeping it going. This is a digital campaign from British Airways where when a plane flew over, it was basically the plane was connecting to the advertising, so it was saying, look, it's flight BA 475 from Barcelona. Well, what the hell the point of that is, I don't really know. But when you're driving down the M4 to Heathrow, you still kind of go, well, that's quite cool. And of course, all the press talked about it. So whether you're an employee, you're going, oh, look, British Airways in the press again, in a good way. If you're a customer, you're not going, oh, I do love British Airways, but it's a bit crap now, let's all fly Emirates. You're going, oh, actually, they're still innovating. They're still doing interesting things, re-energising people. And it's not just marketing. Take Sainsbury's, Red Nose Day, fairly simple example. How do you develop camaraderie? How do you showcase your values, both internally and externally? How do you energise people behind your brand? And of course, the flip side of that, hopefully no one from Sports Direct is here, Mike Ashley Sports Direct. You know, again, it might not be true that they treat their staff worse, but again, perceptually, that's what I believe. So whether it's the Red Nose Day, whether it's the big energetic activities that you can do to reinvigorate staff, or whether it's just on a daily basis, whether you're actually giving staff contracts that make them feel confident and not anxious, you're actually paying them well, you're recognising them, and you're taking them on a career path. All of the fundamentals are also important. And of course, all of that internal energy will be reflected externally, whether it's gatekeepers, commentators in the media, or indeed the share price. Sports Direct share price has lost half its value in the last 6 months. It was worth 2 billion more than JD Sports. JD Sports is now bigger than it in 6 months because it wasn't felt to be delivering that integrity internally. It harmed the reputation externally. It doesn't seem to have a purpose other than making money and doing whatever is the whim of Mike Ashley in a particular period of time. So you can see energy is really important, and I'll show the flip of Mike Ashley, which is Steve Jobs again. And this is where I will leave you because to me, as I say, Steve Jobs embodies lots of things in that they had a very visionary, clear purpose. Everyone knew their role in that purpose and achieving that goal. They had a leader to follow, they had something inspirational to follow. Mike Ashley, on the other hand, possibly is not the same. So I've tried to very quickly go through, from a brand perspective, my take on why I think, and as I say, I could talk for hours on any one of these things, so apologies, but I've tried to, just from a brand perspective, show how all 5 elements of the Pride model are important. And as I say, all 5 of those elements, they impact on me and my decisions I make as a human being when I decide what is suitable for me and what is not suitable for me. Oh, I didn't do that. That's what we ask. Health and well-being, work-life balance, personal care, tailored plans, support for out-of-work interests, and of course, pressure, passion, and people. So they're some of the things we cover. As Sheila said, we can come visit any of you to talk about the model, and we can obviously share more specific the questions. But I guess I just wanted to take you through a bit of my perspective rather than just saying, here are the questions in segment 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So hopefully that was useful.
Thank you very much.
My handing to you, Emily.